Shalom. I don't know. I'm doing my Facebook thing. Shoot. I'm up in my lab working on my shirt and everything, but I'm doing my Facebook thing. And I just want to say, I disagree with a lot of y'all. I really do. On a lot of different things. But I still love you. I know. I'm very opinionated out here, but man, I was just dealing with a post where I was dealing with, I guess, abuse, and how, I guess, they say that it's not lawful to divorce somebody just because you're being physically abused, and I'm like, My first marriage, I was being physically abused, and I was being accused of being physical, but I was the one getting hit. People say, well, man, you 6'4", close to 300 pounds. And I'm like, yeah, I could take it for a while, but I shouldn't have to take it. It ain't cool to have to go to sleep and wake up getting beat or hit on. You know, that ain't cool. And then when you consider defending yourself or whatever, you know, you're the one in the wrong because you're so big. You know, you can separate from a person like that, but then it's like, okay, the depression part, you know, that come about, you know, I'm like, it's so many different things. You know, in marriage, sometimes a person can deny you, you know, the access to them sexually. Then what? You know, they say, oh, well, you can't be with nobody else, but you go months at a time. Oh, you can't masturbate, but you go months at a time. And you have, you know, I don't know. Before I ever got married, I was a whore out there, so I was really, you know, out there. Not justifying anything. I was wrong. I should have just went on and divorced, but people say, oh, you can't just divorce for just any reason. And I'm like, man, sometimes you got to cut off relationships, cut off things that's going to cause you to have problems with the Most High. Seriously, I was mad. I was very upset. I had gave up on the Most High. But basically, that was what, 2001, when everything came to a head. The January 2001, January 1, 2001 is when everything just came to a head. And right after that, I was about to give up on my own life. Or I even considered maybe I need to cancel them. And I'm like, of course, me living in jail is stuff like that. I ain't built for that. But I ain't want to die either and stuff like that. And so people say, well, you know, people could say all day, divorce, you shouldn't do it. Nah, I divorced. I got out of that. And I had so many people, you know, I've been married now to my current wife 23 years, faithfully. I had so many people tell me, oh man, you're supposed to stay with your first wife, and this marriage is not. And I'm like, okay, what about the biblical said that you could add wives or whatever? Well, you still should take back. And I'm like, no. It says also, you know, when you put away a wife or whatever, and they being with somebody else, you ain't supposed to touch it again. So I'm like, what? I'm like, y'all folks so much want to use the scriptures and say, oh, we don't want your opinions and stuff, but you want to use the scriptures so-called, but you want to use it only to your advantage. You want to basically ignore certain things and stuff like that, and only have it when you want to beat somebody up or hold them in a box or whatever. I'm like, wow. I'm never gonna meet nobody's standard and stuff. That's why, you know, though I've been a more, you know, been labeled a more, I ain't got no flock or whatever. I don't have nobody that I'm leading over, and I'm good. I'm leading over my household, and I have enough struggles even doing that. I live my life a certain way that I try to live by the Torah all times. And even people tell me that, oh man, you doing too much. You too legal with it. You trying to do this too much. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Can't win for nothing. But you know what? F them. If my daughters get married, I'm going to do everything I can to vet these guys out. But if they end up being something different and they be harming my daughters, I'm sorry. I have guns. I shouldn't even. I I'm not going to even say what I'm going to do. But I'm a father. I'm not okay with someone harming my daughters. I stopped disciplining them corporally a long time ago, so I don't see someone corporal, whooping them as adults. I don't know. I don't know about that. That ain't part of the agreement. I don't want to see no daughter with a busted lip, black eye, nothing. No. Nah, I don't know if I can handle that. So people say, well, mind you, look, as far as it comes to, if it's any infidelity, stuff like that, I'm out of it. Not my issue. You deal with that. But, you hurting them? Almost, where you can almost take their life or whatever like that. I'm not going to say what I do, because I'm never wanting to self-incriminate, but just try it. A lot of people always talk all this stuff about what they don't believe I'll be able to do. Whatever. Try it. Find out who I am for real. Really. Try me. I'm a nice, I don't like the word nice. I'm a kind person. I'm a kind person. But, nah. Seriously. Also, I'm very opinionated. I know that a lot of times I put stuff out there on the book, and people, they don't like it. Cool. You do not have to operate within my convictions. Sadly to say, if you read Paul, you see often that man has his opinions. This man didn't have no wife, per se. So his opinion was that if you had issues with lust, that you should be married. You should get married. His opinion was, that a leader should be the husband of one wife, according to what some people put out there. But many kings, even King David, had multiple wives. So what is he talking about? Husband of one. What does that mean? He didn't even have a wife himself. So what is he speaking on something from his experience or what? A lot of the stuff he says you can't find in a direct laws to it, but you say, well, that sounds like this. This man put out a lot of stuff, and he even was the one that said, basically, you should qualify things with 2 or more witnesses. But a lot of the stuff that he says, where are the other witnesses? I am never trying to tear down Paul, but I really do believe most people don't comprehend what he's saying. A lot of people have used him to say that you don't have to be the law, deal with the law. But in Philippians, he says that when it comes to the law, he's blameless. That he was a Pharisee of Pharisees, so he couldn't be saying that the law's done away. Then you see through the Acts, he did Sabbath 85 times. About 85 times. And yet, they want to make it as if this man said put away the Sabbath. This man did so much to try to travel back to Jerusalem to keep the feast. They say, he said you don't have to keep the feast. Is he talking about the feast of Yah or the feast of the lands that he was in? Because if you look at most of the books or letters that he wrote, they were to places that were considered pagan places. But of course, there were Yahudim in those places. There were lost sheep in those places. And there were synagogues. But most of us have been told that he wrote to churches. My opinion, my thought is, his letters were to Yahudim in those places. Did it apply to those that were Goyim or non-Yahudim? Sometimes yes. But it was definitely for those that followed the Torah, those that stood up under the covenant of Yah. If you look at the Hebrews 8:8, it tells you who the covenant is to. The covenant is to Israel and the Yahudim. Does that mean that other nations can't tap in? We see by faith, even though Yahusha said, I only came for the lost sheep of Israel, he said it to a woman that was not Israel because her faith activated. A lot of people want to make exceptions into the rules. My opinion and my thought is that a lot of us use our recency bias and try to force it onto the Bible and make it fit. I believe back in that days, if somebody was abusing their woman, the community would have handled that. It would not have had to be to the point that she would have to divorce. The community would have dealt with that. And then that person would have got himself together, or he would have been handled to the point that, oh, she would find a new covering because he would be no more. We say, we can't do that now because I don't want to go to jail. We need to start governing our own communities. That's why we need to have our own little set apart spot. We needed to never segregate, desegregate. We needed to be segregated from these other people. Not because we hate them, but because we have our own laws and our own ways. If you look at the time of Yahusha, they were still segregated, but they were not. They were colonized, but they were trying to do their own thing. But a lot of times they had to go before the leadership of the Romans and the Greeks to ask them, could they do certain things that were within the law? Because they were being governed. Pilate had a say. They couldn't just do what they wanted to do. But we still had our rules. That's why in the Sanhedrin and all that, they would have stuff going on there, but they still had to make sure they didn't cross the line and offend those that were colonizing. We in the same position. You can't just, I stay in the city. It ain't like I could just pull out and kill a goat. And yes, it's lawful to eat animals and stuff like that, but I can't just kill a goat and my neighbors see it and think that it's not going to be a problem. They're going to probably contact Peter, say that I'm endangering animals and all this stuff, and somebody gonna come out and try to see me. Now, if I covered it up and they can't see it, then But even though it tell me I'm supposed to deal with a sheep, a goat or whatever, and provide it for my family for Passover. But if I did it in front of my neighbors and stuff like that, it would probably be a problem. You got to consider where you're at. We are in the land of captivity, and so a lot of things are not going to perfectly fit. So dealing with these abusers and stuff like that, it may not perfectly fit. But if we did some community action on a lot of stuff would not be. You best believe the drug dealer would not be able to do what he is doing if you were to address his parents and then address them. Everybody that's out there has parents. They said, well, they don't honor their parents. But before they became these drug dealers, before they got out there wild, if you had been doing the community thing, you would know this boy is going on the bad. He's going on a tangent, and rein him in, and maybe even have to discipline them, scold them, and maybe even eliminate them if necessary. But I just want to vent a little bit. I'm gonna get back to making my shirts because I do have to go to work, to the job. Journey obviously bound, but I wanted to just vent a little bit. Say a little bit, share some of my opinions, and it's all love, because I still love those that disagree with what I got to say. We're going to have that. A lot of this stuff I've been talking about, the time of day, most people look at the Genesis narrative and always want to say Eve to morning is a day, and I'm like, if you just evening, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is not day. That's all night. They said, well, eat the morning. They said, eat the morning. I'm like, so what happened before that evening? Oh, it was work going on. Oh, it was work going on in the day. But the day is 24 hours. The work all occurred during the time that light would be present. They said, well, it started off dark. Yeah, at dawn, the day starts off dark. It starts to get light. Even when you look at the time of Yahusha, his burial, they came while it was still dark. 6 p.m., it ain't still dark. It's getting dark. But you can't explain this stuff. And people say, that's your opinion. I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. That's my opinion. But the information is right there. But most of us turn off our brains and we start to listening to someone else's opinion and say, I'm stuck here. This is what I've been taught. You were taught opinions. We all sometimes we all got to come to the table with opinions, and then what we do, be Bereans and filter it out and figure out what is actually real to the scriptures and what is just opinion. All right, shalom. All right, I hobble to y'all. Let me get back to this work. Shalom.